Look, I want to get right into it. I noticed something while watching the new Fantastic Four, and I want to explore how these two movies, The Incredibles and First Steps, are so similar and yet so different in so many ways. On one hand, we have The Incredibles, a superhero movie about a family that faces off against a giant threat at the end. And then we have Fantastic Four First Steps, a superhero movie about a family that faces off against a giant at the end. Wait a minute, are these the same movie? Well, yes and no. While they follow a similar visual aesthetic, similar beats, overbearing pressure, the struggle to hold their families together, the desire to be seen, they diverge in substance and scale. One takes a grounded approach, highlighting heroics by letting us sit with the mundane. The other shoots for the stars, delivering galactic proportions, god-like titans, and as Johnny puts it, sexy aliens. Now, at the heart of the film is family, a theme most obvious for comparison amongst the two. What would we do for family? What matters most? How far would we stretch ourselves to save the ones we love? Both male leads in both films struggle with their head of the house responsibilities, to show up as men for a family that needs them, to have a plan. In The Incredibles, Bob Parr's longing for the glory days of heroism masks a deeper fear of domestic stagnation. His arc is about learning to be present for his family, to realize that being a good husband and father is just as heroic as stopping a robot. In First Steps, Reed Richards carries a different kind of weight, the burden of genius. He's an intelligent man who sees too much of the future and not enough of the present.
I hate that
That's a
plan.
bad plan. That's a stupid plan.
Ironically causing him to make a lot of mistakes he holds guilt for. His arc is similarly introspective, learning that he doesn't have to bear the weight on his shoulders and his shoulders alone. As Ben points out, you're not as smart as you think. For all of his big picture science, his focus on the problem at hand, it's actually the other members of the Fantastic Four that come to his rescue. It's Johnny of all that intercepts the Silver Surfer's messages and catches on to the details that Reed missed. Both characters, Bob and Reed, represent father figures strained by responsibility, but the nature of that strain is filtered through the film's wildly different tones. One suburban and nostalgic, and the other cosmic and existential. Now, visually, both films adopt a retro 60s style that draws heavily from mid-century aesthetics. The Incredibles leans into 1960s spy film styling, slick gadgets, bold architecture, and all that sort of jazz. It's playful and pulpy, a real love letter to Bond films and its grand hidden spaces and entrapping devices. Stuff you'd see in spy films. First Steps also bathes in the 60s aesthetic, but more in a retro-futuristic sense. Think if the Jetsons met Jack Kirby. Comic booky and heightened, retro and bold. Both movies are deliberate in their design though. For the FF, you could say its 60s aesthetic acts as a tonal anchor, making things like the Mole Man, Subterranea, 100-story tall giants, flying cars, and evil apes all quite believable in this heightened world. The villain too reflects each film's core theme. Syndrome is personal, a rejected fan turned foe. His motives are petty, human, and heartbreakingly misguided. Galactus in The Silver Surfer, on the other hand, operates on a different scale entirely. Galactus isn't evil, he's indifferent, a god with a simple hunger. The Silver Surfer is his herald, a tragic figure caught between duty and conscience. These aren't villains to punch, they're forces to understand. Funny enough, both movies have giant kaijus chasing around a very small MacGuffin. Nonetheless, this difference in scale speaks volumes about what each movie values. The Incredibles is about emotional stakes, Fantastic Four is about ideological ones. And while Syndrome might be the more memorable villain, more personal, Galactus feels mythic, a god out of time whose presence alone changes just the air of the film. The guy's got aura. Where the two films really part ways though is in pacing. The Incredibles is really tightly structured. Not a second is wasted. Every emotional beat lands, every arc resolves with clarity, it builds with surgical precision towards a climax that feels earned and explosive.
I can't lose you again!
First Step, on the other hand, starts strong, visually imaginative, emotionally grounded, full of promise. But somewhere in the second half, the momentum slows. The introspection becomes a little too airy, and key beats like The Surfer's defection aren't given the room to fully resonate. It's not that the film lacks ideas, if anything, it has too many, but its deliberate pace doesn't always serve them. The result is a movie that feels profound in its first hour and slightly scattered by its last. The turning point is really here. The Fantastic Four's first encounter with Galactus is where First Steps truly peaks. It's a moment built to, a moment of awe that culminates in a wormhole chase sequence bursting with a visceral sense of energy, echoing the same sense of danger found in Helen's flight with her children in The Incredibles.
Abort! Abort! There are children aboard! Say again, there are children aboard this... No!
But after these highs, the two films diverge. While The Incredibles escalates tension and physical stakes interlaced with strong character beats and growth for the family, First Steps takes a quieter turn. Emotionally, the FF face weighty dilemmas, confronting a cosmic force beyond comprehension, weighing the fate of their child against humanity's survival. Yet the physical peril noticeably diminishes until Galactus' arrival. This drop in traditional stakes might lose casual audiences, but it's also where Fantastic Four really distinguishes itself. They're scientists first, heroes second. It consciously chooses a more meditative approach, presenting its heroes not as fighters, but as thinkers and explorers. It's a film more interested in questions than it is answers. And sometimes we're left feeling a little underwhelmed, as we're never explicitly given the answers to the questions we're looking for. Like, why does Johnny love space? Or why is he motivated to sacrifice himself? Instead, it's more concerned with bigger, more cosmic questions, asking how you save a world when violence isn't the solution, when you're facing a god that can't be hurt or reasoned with. On the other side is The Incredibles, which slows down to deepen its characters while steadily ramping up its action. First Steps, however, pauses to reflect. It doesn't always make for a tighter film like The Incredibles, but it does make for a more existentially ambitious one. In the climax, both families face a larger-than-life threat that pushes our heroes to their limits. I find it kind of amusing that both defeat the big bads in literally the exact same way, a straightforward shot spearing towards their center. If you think about it, it's pretty much the same scenario. Both families got similar powers, both are assisted by a supplementary character that surfs around, and yeah, both get defeated the exact same way. Smack bang to the chest. But to me, the crux and the beauty of everything here is what these characters have learned. It's through family, togetherness, leaning on each other that we can find strength. It's about parents pushing themselves for their kids. It's about the sacrifices, the way we lay down our lives for the ones we love. Granted, The Incredibles builds to this point a lot more clearly than First Steps, and hey, maybe that's why the catharsis of their victory hits harder at the end. All I'm saying is if FF spent just as much time developing its characters and really leaning into the characters as much as it wants to explore its existential questions, then the actual sacrifices the characters do want to make would hit a lot harder. Now, as a comic fan, I know the answers to these questions. Johnny is the one member of the FF that usually lacks utility or purpose. He's chasing validation from women, from others, from his family. He's eager to prove, to serve, and this is why he's willing to lay down his life, desperate to prove himself. But here, Johnny is seen as a competent asset of the FF. Heck, he's the one to decode and figure out Shalabal's messages. So my question is, where does this Johnny's desire or motivation to lay down his life come from? If he doesn't have a lacking self-worth and a yearning to prove himself, then where does this desire come from? I guess I was just looking for more meat in my characters, a sit-down where they explain what they want or how they see themselves. Now you can see all of this within the subtext of the movie itself and how the characters portray themselves. It just would have been nice if their character arcs were more clear. I guess the movie just moves at such a fast pace that it doesn't get to linger long enough to answer any of the questions that I really wanted about these characters. In the end, The Incredibles and Fantastic Four First Steps are two sides of the same coin. Both families with extraordinary gifts navigating the weight of their responsibility, but filtered through vastly different lenses. Funny enough, both with scores by Michael Giacchino. One is grounded, emotional, and tightly constructed, delivering its catharsis through kinetic spectacle and crystal clear character arcs. The other dares to reach further, to drift in thought and question, to be messy and philosophical, to ask what heroism looks like when fists aren't enough. The Incredibles charms us with precision. First Steps, however, challenges us with ambition. One celebrates the everyday heroism of being present for those we love. The other dares to ask impossible questions beyond our understanding, facing an impossible adversary beyond comprehension. And it's in that contrast lies something beautiful. Two films, equally retro, equally heartfelt, both reminding us that the most powerful thing a hero can do is choose to show up for their family in fantastic ways, even when the stakes are dire.